half a minute or something.
Yeah.
And so now, yeah. Okay. Yeah, welcome back, everybody. And now is the session on the round table. I just have to do small bits and pieces here. So where is it? Sorry. Yeah, well, I would welcome people on the YouTube channel, but yeah, round table, and we have new guests. It's Liu Westring. So Liu, where are you? You're there. Good. And we have Maiya. Also good. And let's see. And there's a third. Yeah, Radek or Radosław. I don't know.
Radek, it's okay. It's easier.
Radek is okay. Yeah, and the roundtable discussion will be managed by my good colleague, Laura McAtackney, whose office I can look at over there, but you're at home right now. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit pity because we could have shared a cup of coffee or something, but okay, Laura. Now, yeah, and yeah, take it.
Thank you very much, Jens. So my name's Laura McAtackney. I'm an associate professor. I work alongside Jens, literally across the corridor from each other. And I work in sustainable heritage management and archaeology. So I've been involved in the project from Aarhus University. I'm mainly involved in dissemination and thinking about how we work with social media. So I was very excited to bring together this round table, and I wanted to bring people in with different experiences from different ways of engaging on social media with archaeology, and particularly, you know, in different, I know some people have got quite a long-term engagement with this. So we really wanted to get some insights in how we work with this. I'm also really keen for the panelists from earlier today who are still with us to be able to jump in and give their opinions as well, because we had some really great presentations earlier. So I'm going to start by asking the four people on the panel who are Maiya, Liv, Murray, and and Radek. Radek is so much easier for me to say, so I'm really glad we're allowed to. I just want to ask you to introduce yourselves first so everybody knows what you come from, you know, what your background is, your experiences of working on social media. And I'm going to start with Radek because you have a presentation to show.
Sure. I hope it will work like everybody are always. It's okay? Not this one screen. Of course, we tried, and I'm not sure.
I think if you go to the little share button, there's one down at the bottom.
But it shows on my, of course, on my other
screen. Okay, yeah.
Other screen. Okay, we can just drop it. The thing is, hello, I'm Radosław Biel. It should work. Of course, it's not working when it should be. The usual stuff. I am editor in the only, and probably that's why the best archaeological popular science magazine in Poland. My job is mostly to, I will stop sharing because it would be easier to see you. My job is mostly to manage all social media profiles and to try to engage with our readers and followers. The main goal of our magazine is to make an archaeology more popular in Poland. We try to share the newest and most important discoveries, not only from Poland, but from all around the world. We try to cooperate with great and ambitious projects such as Archaeobald, and spread the info, of course, about them. And also, of course, teach people that we don't do dinosaurs, as Mr. Soup was saying. What else? We try to cooperate with other content creators, as mentioned before, YouTube Polish channel, historical channel called History Uncensored, and one of our videos which we made together, it's already like nearly 1.5 million views and still going up. Of course, you can follow us at all popular social media, but be wary that our content is mostly in Polish, so the best way will be Twitter, where we try to mostly write in English. That's all. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. That's great. Now, can I ask Maiya if you would like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Maiya and I'm head of community at DigVentures. I've got a background in both field archaeology and in marketing, and I've brought the two together at DigVentures, where we are an organisation that runs archaeological excavations that anyone in the world can be part of. Over the last 6 years, we've built a really strong and wonderful and giving community who support everything that we do. And ever since we started, we've always offered people two ways to be involved: in the field and hands-on, or online from home. So we've obviously got quite a big stake in all of this, trying to keep people involved in archaeology online through social media, but in more engaged and in-depth ways. And we've had a really exciting and interesting summer this year. So unfortunately, lockdown did mean that we had to postpone a couple of our community excavations, but we didn't let that stop us doing archaeology. We ran a whole summer of online programs, including an online course where we were teaching people to dig test pits in their own gardens at home and how to look for archaeology online using LiDAR and mapping results. We also hosted an international archaeology festival where archaeologists from around the world were sharing their latest discoveries with people watching at home. So we've been pretty busy online this summer, and we've just headed back into a second lockdown in England, and we're about to start yet another program of online archaeology events alongside a live excavation that our team is still actually working on in the field. So we're really trying to bring the two together over the winter.
That is great, thank you. And I've got lots I want to ask you about that, because it sounds very interesting that you were already very well equipped to work online. So just how much that's changed or not, I'll get back to later on. Could I ask Liv now if you would introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. Hello, I am Liv Westring. I am a part of Archeosoup Productions, which is mostly, known for Mr. Soup, but I am the Swedish elf in the background. I've been involved with Archaeosoup since 2012, but Mark has been online on YouTube since December 2010. So we're on our 10th anniversary this year. And we mainly do content production on YouTube and share archaeological news through our different social media feeds, like Twitter and Facebook mainly. Mark also did a lot of workshops and like photo or video work on site with the universities and stuff in Northeast England and, well, the rest of the UK, while I've been around on a few sites in Sweden and trying to spread the word and kind of bridge the gap between academic archaeology, field archaeology, and the public. And, well, from what we know, a lot of people seem to view our stuff, so we're happy to be invited. and I'm really looking forward to this roundtable.
Great, thank you very much. Also got lots to ask you about as well, because we all love Archaeosoup, so I'm very excited you're with us today. And last, our own Marie Conger, who will have to reintroduce herself for people who didn't see her this morning. So,
yeah, hi. As Laura said, my name is Marie. I just finished my master's degree program at Aarhus University in Sustainable Heritage Management. I got involved with the Archaeology project back in May of 2019. It was part of my internship for my degree. And I worked as a social media intern and also worked with visitor experience at the Archaeology site of Sortemud on Bornholm. So I went to the excavation for 2 weeks. While I was there, I helped manage the social media posts, also collected a lot of data and information and photographs and things so that we could continue making posts after the excavation had ended. And during this time, I also observed the visitors and also interviewed the students who were part of the dissemination program to kind of get their feedback about what the visitors thought of the experience. And since then, I've completed my internship, but I am now still involved with Archaeology as a social media consultant.
great, thank you very much. And thank you for everyone for introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about your organizations and what you're doing. So I just want to start my first question, and these are really broad, open questions, so feel free to answer them how you wish, and anybody else who wishes to jump in from the other panels also do too. But I think I'll start with Liv. I was wondering about, because you've worked in social media for quite a long time, so a lot of archaeologists are kind of, we have to do some stuff with projects and maybe we're on and off, but we're not always consistently aware of how social media works. And, also, as we've heard, how much it changes. So I just wanted to ask your opinion on, in your experience in working with archaeology and social media, how have you seen the use of social media change? And do you think we work as effectively with it as we could do?
It has changed a lot since I got on board in 2012. This past year has really shown like a lot of different kinds of usage when it comes to social media. We have archaeological institutions like universities showing up and starting to spread what they do and their research. We also have like contract archaeology, especially in Sweden. We're starting to see people post more on Facebook on what they're doing, post their reports, local museums digitizing everything, so it's available. And we also have noticed an increase in people reaching out to us, asking for help with their digital content. So there's absolutely a raised awareness, especially this year, for understandable reasons. But I wouldn't say it's as effective as it could be. It's absolutely like miles better than it was, because we don't have to explain why social media can be important for archaeology and archaeological institutions anymore. But there are still some gaps, I would say, about, especially in older institutions, if I can be so bold, in understanding how content spreads, and a lot of things that were talked about today during the webinars on what content spreads, how it spreads, and also an understanding on how people can react to said content and how to deal with those reactions. Because, it's not always roses and champagne when you get people to comment on what you're posting.
Great, thank you. That's actually really useful around the reactions, because I think it was interesting that came out in quite a few of the talks earlier about how much you know, trying to make these posts interactive rather than just preaching out to people actually makes more the content kind of spread more. But then there's that difficulty if you try and make things interactive that you might be attracting, you know, sometimes quite problematic people and responses. But we can talk about that a bit later, because I had some interesting experiences of that in the last 6 months as well. Yeah, can I just open up to the other panelists if anybody wants to come in with their opinions on that as well?
I can say that Mari already pointed out that it's always mostly goes down to the lack of human resources, because we all know that creating a singular content, proper content, sometimes takes much more time than we would hope so. And if we even start to speak about such things like meaningful strategies, how to post more than one piece of content, it's really hard to come by people that are just scientists. Yeah, we know how to research, how to dig, how to excavate, how to document it, but we don't really exactly know how to tweet about it, for example.
Yes, thank you. Maiya, I seen your hand was going up there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I agree with both of you, Radak and Liv, but I think the wonderful thing that's happened in the last few months is that there's this huge dawning realizations by archaeological organizations and museums and everyone that what you do online is as important as what you do in real life, in your venues, on your sites and everything. And it's kind of seeing everyone wake up to that and go through the realization that, blimey, this is actually quite a lot of work. There's a lot of thought that goes into, as Radak was saying, the strategies, the content. There is a lot of stuff that goes into it, but it's fantastic seeing everyone wake up to that and take their first steps and become much more part of it. I think at the moment people are still very much focused on those first steps, on starting to do a bit more dissemination and stuff. And I think really, as Liv said, we're not quite there yet being as effective as we possibly could be with social media, because there is so much more that you can do in terms of the depth and types of engagement that you can have with people. It's not necessarily just sharing something that's a meme that spreads, but using social media as a way to pull people deeper into the projects that you're doing and having them end up actually contributing and being part of the work that you're doing as well.
Yeah, that's a great point actually about the contributions. Yes, Marie?
I think I'm probably the newest one to the social media aspect of the field out of the panelists, but like even in the time that I've been involved in this, I've seen social media changing already. A lot of it is, due in part to everything going on with the pandemic and the fact that we are spending so much more of our lives online now. But I do agree that it has presented some opportunities, and especially as we were talking in one of the sessions earlier, there are so many ways that we haven't even thought about how we can reach out to our audience, and how we can interact with them and have a conversation instead of just throwing photos and one-liners and stuff at them. So I'm really excited being newer to this field. I'm really excited to see where it goes from here as well.
Yeah, anybody else got anything they want to say from the rest of the panel?
Do you think that in a nearby future there is a possibility that will, on the universities, a special course for students to how to use social media to make your research popular?
Yeah, actually, with our courses, we do give them a little bit of a little class, a quite small amount, but they do have to do social engagement, because even if it's like, how do you write a press release or how do you communicate? It's all about communicating. That's not just academic. Like, not everybody wants to know every tiny detail about your archaeological finds, but how do we communicate why this is interesting or important is actually, it's a really hard skill to get when we're so used to dealing with nitty gritty. So I think it's quite important, but absolutely, I think actually we should be much more focused on that than just teaching the skills of archaeology, but actually how do you communicate archaeology? Yeah, so the next question I was wanting to ask oh yes, Carolina, I see, yes, hand up.
One comment, I think that's very important that right now, also during the studies, people are learn how to prepare and how to work with the social media. I am very happy because at our university right now, we also start with a course, the whole course for the person who are working with history, archaeology, let's say, and general cultural management, how to prepare information not only for social media, but it's completely different way how you present and prepare information, for example, for the newspapers, how you are talking in the television and popularize the information. It's looking very easy, but definitely it isn't. So that's my small comment. And I'm very happy that we start with this topic. Thank you.
No problems. Jens?
Yeah, hello. The issue of communication, I mean, of having that as a formal part of the academic curriculum. I mean, that was exactly what we did and was exemplified with the Archaeobaltic at Sortemul, where Marie Conger was attending. So Marie, could you please talk a bit about how it was organized, the relationship to the students, how this, let's say, engagement of the students in relation to the public, how that worked?
Yeah, so I'll comment on that, and then I'll also comment on how the students also engaged with the social media aspect of it. So with the visitors that came to the site, there were students available to greet them, introduce them to the site, give guided tours, answer any questions that they had. And the visitors responded very positively to this. And as something that I mentioned earlier, one thing that was really interesting is they weren't just interested in seeing the artifacts. They weren't just interested in seeing the kurguba or any of the cool things coming out of the trench, but they were actually interested in people working there as well and interested in the archaeological process. And I think that's another opportunity that social media has to make that process more transparent, because if you're not, in archaeology, it seems kind of like this secretive sort of mystical world that's very associated with, how archaeology is portrayed in popular media. And then with back to the students and how we engage them in the social media, we actually had, every week we had a different student, and these were students working on their bachelor's at Aarhus University. But we would have them, first of all, give them free rein to take pictures and share photos. And if they had any that they particularly liked, if they captured moments, they could send them to those of us who were managing the social media, because we can't be everywhere at once, of course. And there are, little moments where something is just uncovered, or, maybe just like showing a fun moment that someone is having during a break even is something that can gather a lot of attention through social media posts as well, to, again, show that more human side of the archaeological process. So by involving the students in this and allowing them to, or giving them rein to kind of create and submit their own content, I think also really enriched the content that we were able to provide.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually, around the idea of how you interact with people. It's not just about presenting things to them; it's actually getting them to contribute and to And particularly whenever you're working in places where people might have longer memories of what was supposed to have been there, and they have their own stories and heritage. I think that's, you know, why archaeology is important. It's not treasure hunting, it's people feel connections to it. So, and I'm sure you've all found that in work you've done, Maiya. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to really reiterate that point. Actually, one of the most useful things sometimes when we're on an excavation is that kind of two-way knowledge flow that you can have with social media. There have been so many times when we've found something that we didn't necessarily know what it was and been able to share it on social media, and people out there following the excavation come back with all sorts of information about what they think it is, which is in many occasions actually proved to be more than just like a game or a social media thing that we're doing to garner attention, but has actually been useful to us as an excavation team. Being able to receive information back in sort of immediately is been fantastic as well. Another bonus to social media.
Yeah. Liv, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in that even for us, when like the most precious moments for us is when we reach that, when we present something, especially if it's a bit more local history, and we get people from the area chiming in with their experiences of a place or of that site, because that's when you capture why archaeology matters and why cultural heritage is important. And I find that to be partly the reason why I'm into it, is the stories. And is to be able to share that connection and that history with people. And you can't do that going just one way. You have to be open to other perceptions and experiences of that place. So I find that that's key to any successful communication.
I totally agree. I think also people, you know, sometimes we worry that, you know, because archaeology is so site specific that maybe it's too local or too small for other people to find interesting. But I actually find that people tend to connect to things they can understand, like a domestic dwelling or somewhere they can find a connection to a story, which is, you know, human. It doesn't have to be exactly their archaeology or their area, but they understand why it's important. Yeah, Maiya.
I was just going to give one really concrete example of that. So at Lindisfarne, which is one of our flagship excavations, early medieval burial site and potential metalworking area, on a lot of the burials, we found these white quartz pebbles, and we posted about that saying, you know, this is an previously unrecorded bit of history that we've uncovered here. It's not actually documented anywhere that this was something that they did at the time, which was to put these white quartz pebbles on the graves. And we heard back from people in like all continents across the world saying, we do that in our culture too, or I've seen that in this place too. And I think that's just one of my favorite examples of that, I think.
Oh, that's fantastic. And also I was thinking, yeah, because Newgrange has white quartz around it in Ireland. So I'm sure we can all think of places with white quartz in burial context. Great. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to another question, which is, you know, because we're kind of aware that social media is really important. It's really great for communicating, and, you know, it's seen as a very positive thing. I was just wondering, have you any thoughts about how, you know, if we have to be careful using social media, does it have negative sides as well? And how do we work with that? I'm thinking particularly because, you know, as we're also on social media for the last, you know, 6-9 months, that it was really apparent that, you know, there's a lot more focus on certain stories coming out, and you find things to do with DNA, gender, you know, colonialism, all these kind of big nasty issues can create a kind of, you know, trolling and kind of difficult people to deal with on social media. So I was just wondering if you have any thoughts or, you know, kind of experiences of that. I'll start with Radek.
From my experience, it's mostly coming to be respectful to them and polite, and they will sometimes be confused by when people are being polite to them. But of course, it doesn't work always. So the people that are working in this industry, in this field of social media, probably have better experiences or ways to deal with them.
Yeah, I was just thinking, because, you know, Twitter and things are very interesting because, you know, people anonymize a lot more on there, and people can have multiple accounts. So they can have a public face, and then they can have like kind of slightly hidden accounts. So you find that there's a lot of anonymous people on it who just interact differently than what, you know, we would on Facebook, or, you know, something where you have to have an identity. So I think sometimes it's the different places you post can be different. Is anybody? Yeah, Maiya? And then Johanna.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really important topic, and I feel like definitely in the last few months there's been more more of the horrible stuff. I guess my one piece of advice for people who are doing archaeology on social media and sharing things is that you need to try and see around the corner for where these things might happen and how what you're posting might be interpreted. Yeah. But also you need to be ready to be in the comments and monitor them. So if you're going to post something that could potentially provoke a certain type of reaction, don't do it when you're not going to be there monitoring, because these things can act as a magnet and a talking place for all sorts of people together and end up saying very horrible things and conversations going in really nasty directions. And you need to be there and have the time available ready to monitor and control all of that.
Yeah. So yeah, Johanna?
I recommend to use netiquette, so a set of rules that people who are liking your webpage or your Facebook page, or are in your group, if you have groups using Facebook groups, that they need to, and if they are not, then you have, this, please, you're not, and of course we have law behind us. So if anybody is using dirty words or like, going against the law, then you have the law behind. But usually I don't engage. I'm a social media expert, so I don't engage in a conversation because it never goes well. Because, and I studied psychology, so believe me, there are people there who are just looking to have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them are there to say unpleasant stuff and provoke responses.
So ask yourself twice why they're doing this, because if you get engaged, that means they got you, and it will be bigger and bigger and bigger, the conversation. And usually if you have audience that is very well connected to you, they will defend you in the end. Because I saw many times that you let the people who write nasty stuff go, and immediately the audience is like, hey, don't write that here, it's like, it's not nice, blah blah blah. So yeah, take a deep breath and have a escape route, as Maiya said, for critical situations. So it's better to always have like an email if something is wrong or something you don't like, or you felt I don't want to like you felt offended, because you're already, you can manipulate people into feeling offended. So it's like, if there's something you would like to tell us, please write that in that email. So you have to have a strategy for that kind of critic situation.
Or else just block. Just get rid of people who are terrible.
Yes, but you have to warn them first, because I was working in the municipality of Warsaw, so big social media and very a lot of legal potential suing. We blocked twice people who were, who had lawyers and etc., etc. So you have to always warn that, please, you're not respecting the rules here. We will block you in the future.
Good points. Yeah, sorry, Liv, I think you were...
I just wanted to chime in with the core following kind of line. We have worked hard during the last 10 years to build a good space to discuss archaeology, especially on our Facebook page, but also in our YouTube comments, which feels like a unicum on YouTube, that you usually have mostly nice comments. But we have seen a drastic change over the last 6 months, where certain kind of topics that have always been, a bit iffy, have attracted a lot of other kind of attention than we're used to. And we have gone quite hard on being polite, to the point, and to not engage. One comment, and if they continue to spew, then that's on them. But we're not there's no use spilling your energy into that black hole of negativity that comes with a negative social media person that's just out to bait you or to tell you that you're trying to brainwash people by telling them science. It's like, you can't.
Oh, wow. I wasn't even thinking of the kind of anti-science angle. Like the ones I've noticed the most were, because I'm mainly on UK and Irish-based archaeology channels, was really definitely quite racist, anti, kind of black stuff, particularly around the Black Lives Matter stuff. So all of a sudden, any posts about colonialism was getting kind of jumped upon. And some of them went, and actually it was a really good point that Maiya said, but some of them went completely out of control because they were posted late at night and then left for like 6 or 7 hours. And you can have people engaging from all around the world. So there could be people on there when you think, your site is asleep, but essentially it's not. And it just went completely out of control in one of the contexts I've seen. So it was, quite difficult. Yeah, Johanna?
If I can say something, you know what's happening in Poland right now.
Yes.
So, So people are destroying the windows of institutions and businesses who have a poster pro the strike of women, and institutions are not getting money or getting sued because they do that. So it's a really igniting situation now, and I'm scared to write anything on my blogs right now because first, it's not suitable time to write anything. Because of the lockdown and that institutions will be closed again, and I don't know if they will survive. And the second thing is that everything you can write, even about ecological topics, people are scared to teach ecology in their institutions because sometimes in small towns it's considered, left-wing kind of approach. So.
Terrifying. Like we've seen quite a lot of stuff about the women's protests, particularly in Ireland. We had a similar situation with abortion only being legalized in the last year. So we always look to what's happening in other countries, but terrifying, and I can see how that would easily spill over onto social media as well. So you have to be, really careful. But I also think, we have a responsibility sometimes to also be the voice for reason and not to kind of hide and not talk about stuff because we'll get lots of horrible trolls, I think most people can see that trolls are wrong and they're not representative of what we think, I hope anyway. But yeah, moving on again, topicality. And so I'm going to ask Marie to start with this question. I was just wondering, have you, particularly in the last 6 months since lockdown started in March, have you seen changes in how social media is being used and interacted with during the pandemic? And actually, has that changed during the course of it, from the start to what we're into now, which is almost people getting tired, like kind of fatigue of the pandemic now?
From what I've seen with the Archaeobalt page in particular, it's kind of hard to say because we don't have, a long established tradition of posting to really see how much things have changed from the first year, because the first year everything was new, and then the second year everything was new in a different, terrifying way. But something that has surprised me is that the audiences still stayed engaged despite the lack of fresh content. Like we were able to gather enough photos and information and things like that to be able to recycle a lot of that throughout the year and provide additional information about the sites that hadn't really been covered during the excavation season. And there is still, a lot of interest in that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the sensational kind of live from the trench sort of thing in order to connect with the audience. I think I had something else to add, but it's left my head.
You can come back, no problem. Yeah, Liv?
Well, we have 10 years of this, so we have seen, like during 2020, we have been quite surprised because we were fearing that we would lose a lot of followers, or like that the fallout would be bigger than it has been. But when we're talking numbers, we've been coasting. We're steadily on about 20,000 on YouTube and 23,000 on Facebook. But we have seen an increase in and a change in that interaction that we have with those who view our content. Like we have a lot of, though we haven't like sunk, so we have a constant of new followers, we have had more loud leavers that we call them during this year, and that leave in protest of us talking about Black Lives Matter or slavery, colonialism, like the history of like just oppression. And also when we breached like the complex issue that is DNA research and the heritage research that has been like kind of trending these past few years. And like when people talk about like, I am this, I am that, blah, blah. And that has increased with like, we can see it like it's almost paralleling with the curve of how more intense like the outside world is getting. So the more stress there is in the outside world, the more loud leavers we get when we post sensitive topics. But we also have like more followers that actually step up and support the kind of content that we produce and share. So that's nice, but you know, it's always like anywhere on the internet, it's like the loudest and most negative people that screams the most. So you just have to remember to be like, okay, they're just loud. It's just a lot of white noise out there. But yeah, it's definitely been a change.
Interesting, because yeah, particularly for such a long time doing this work, then you would really notice it. As Marie says, we've had like a roller coaster of first year and then into lockdown in the second year. Yeah, I just wanted to ask Maiya as well, because you know, I find it really interesting how DigVentures works. Like it's a really great model for how to engage people, particularly using the internet. And I just wondered if you wanted to say a bit more about, you know, how you have been interacting with people online over the long term, and whether that's changed or not in the last 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, so I mean, certainly it's been changing. So I guess anyone who works in social media knows there's, you know, you're trying to do different things at different times. You might be trying to grow your audience, or you might be trying to deepen your engagement with your audience and have them involved in more deeper ways. And I feel like with the time that we've had available over the summer, we've actually been able to do so much more of the stuff where people are actually getting involved and doing stuff with us online. So we've always had that option available for people, but it has been embraced so much more over the last few months. So, I mean, one example was the online course that we ran. We had 6,000 people, I think, in one cohort from about 70 different countries around the world, learning about archaeology together. Like, how do we find sites? How do we excavate? What happens to all the finds, but then also applying what they'd learned on the course to digging test pits in their garden. And we saw this amazing community of all the people on the course growing up around that, talking to each other about what they're finding in their test pits. You know, someone might be in Australia and somebody else might be in Scotland, and we had people in the Caribbean as well, and I think in Malaysia, and you know, talking about what they're finding and the processes that they're going through, and we're starting to see a lot more of that kind of thing, and we ourselves are starting to experiment a bit more with that kind of thing as well. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be running an online program again, as I mentioned before. Some of the things that we're going to be doing with people are things like making a virtual monument. So we've got someone going out to take photos of a monument that we need to survey, and they'll be working together in an online session to make a model of that. And then together with our head of fieldwork, we'll actually be inspecting it and looking for evidence to help actually do the survey, but they'll be doing it online from home. So we're starting to get a bit more playful with the kinds of sort of collaborative and co-produced work that we can do online with the tools of social media and the internet at our disposal. So yeah, exciting times.
Yeah, that's really, and I think it's also one of those things that really makes you think whenever you're using social media a lot. like, why do people find archaeology interesting? And like, it's not always the actual process of excavating. That's maybe, you know, particularly for older people, particularly for someone like me, I don't like put my knees in the ground for too long. It's quite painful. But, you know, people have different reasons why they find archaeology interesting. And sometimes it's almost like gardening. You know, when people go and do a test pit in their garden, it's to do something, you know, outside where they don't have to leave the confines of where they live if they're in lockdowns and things like that. So, yeah, I'm really interested sometimes in why we find people, you know, actually want to engage with archaeology. And it's often different from why we do. I just want to ask that actually to Radek as well, around particularly the Popular Science magazine. What do you find your readers find most interesting about archaeology? Do they have certain things that they're really focused on?
Genetics, also, especially about the earliest history of Slavic people. Because we have these two kinds of theories where we came from. We have I won't go into detail, but we have also right now the strong pseudoscience topic of the Great Lechia. It's the biggest empire in the world, Slavic empire, which fought with Rome Empire, defeated Alexander the Great. And yeah, they are getting bigger and bigger. And we are trying to explain people that it's not true, and we as archaeologists don't try to brainwash them, don't try to forcing onto them the wrong history, because they know the real truth or something like this. So probably the same thing that Liv was saying.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. You find that some people, like there's certain groups on the internet who either want to find this past greatness or they want to find a past victimhood, you know, and that creates a lot of mythologies. Like I work from Irish archaeology around the kind of, you know, this creation of white slave myths as a means of trying to counter discussions about the transatlantic slave trade and its repercussions, which I think it's so interesting how these things have been created and circulated online. Like they didn't really exist, you know, 20 years ago, but like they've got huge numbers of people creating memes and trying to circulate these ideas of like, you know, great or tragic past to try and, you know, tie into their present identity, which is, you know, quite weird, particularly when you can tell them this didn't exist and they don't want to believe you. So this kind of anti-science kind of route as well.
Yeah, tragic past is the common bread in Polish history. Our history and the teaching at the ground level is mostly about our being us as victims of our bad neighbors. So this is not popular. It's just common.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of reaction to that then if you publish articles in your magazine which counter that myth? Do they create a lot of reaction?
We are trying not to, but we are seeing many popular, historical mostly, because you know, archaeology, the archaeology before medieval times, it's not about the Poland, yeah, it's about Polish lands. But the historical channels and profiles, they are getting really, really excited always about being us, the little ones that are hurt, that were hurt.
Yeah. Oh yes, coming from an Irish background, very similar. I know all about these kind of myths. Liv, if you put your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to like chime in on that because if you want examples on how upset people can get about their perceived past, you should check in our videos about the Celts.
Oh yeah.
It's an infected subject, and we try to deal with it as, you know, kindly as we can and be educators and edutainers above everything, but it can get hostile and you just have to like take a step back and be like, okay, this is really important to you and you don't want to listen to me, so, you know, I guess that's fine. But it's fun. I find it kind of interesting the way people seek out these kind of like counter arguments to their own beliefs just to argue about it. But you know, it's it's something that's really important to them, even though we might have a different opinion on what it is. So you just have to be mindful that your like perspective on things aren't the same as theirs. I mean, they're perceiving that they are speaking the truth, and you have to walk into the conversation with that in the background. So you're like, okay, I know you think that is absolute truth that you're speaking. Here is kind of why we don't think that way. And that can work sometimes. Sometimes it absolutely doesn't. But the humility has to be in your own approach, because you can never expect like a humble approach from anyone else on the internet. So I think it's just important to remember, because it usually helps to take the edge off things.
Yeah, I think that's also, you know, particularly things where our ideas have changed about the past. So, you know, sometimes people will tie into something that they've heard, you know, read whenever they were in school 30 or 40 years ago, or something they've again found on a website they didn't know was not that reputable. And so, you know, they really, you know, don't want to have these ideas taken away from them. And that's why I think, you know, what our discussions about mystifying the archaeological process is quite important, you know, that we show where we're getting our new ideas from, that it's not just that, you know, we're just kind of making this stuff up, that here's what we have found and here's what it's telling us against what we had found, you know, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it's so important to do outreach and to get new research out there, because like a lot of things don't get updated. Like school books are still using research that's 20 or 30 years old. So even young people coming out of school can be like, what? I went to high school a year ago and this was not what they told me. Yeah. And you're like, okay. So here's all the new research, and talk to people in a way that they understand, so they don't feel like they're being talked down to. It's just that there's more information to have.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. It's like how you did that introduction. Yeah, Agatha?
I wanted to say that I talked about it in my presentation, that this is this is about the quality of information. And I think that Radek said that they are not arguing with those people who are talking about Great Leche and so on. And this is the good way, because the discussion with them, arguing with them, will never end. But this what we can do. We can, if I may say, produce more and more the information based on the scientific research. And also I think it was very important thing was Wenka was saying about that it's so important to whom we are talking, what kind of people, it's young people, older people, and we have to think about the way we are talking to them and make a difference between the way how we talk about archaeology to young people or to older people. And but I agree that the discussion with, you know, you will not convince anyone who thinks that the earth is flat. So, because they know that. So the same with the archaeology. This is the reliable information can help in this case, I think.
Yeah. Yes, Nick?
I agree with you, but we also have to be careful of what we say. In the sense that sometimes just by telling the truth, we can also create a problem that we were not planning on the very beginning. For example, when we're digging in Sormu, by the time we speak about gold, yes, we are talking about the discovery we're having in there, the items we've been getting out of the excavation, but at the same time, just by saying gold, that creates a great expectation in all these metal detecting people. Some of them, they are following the rules. Yeah, some of them are very respectful, especially within the island. But then we have people from the neighborhood which are coming, and they are coming overnight, sneaking around just to do some looting. And then the country is not prepared for that because they don't have laws to stop this. So we have some issues in there that we really have to think about. How do we transmit the information? How do we do it? How do we say it? Sometimes we do it with the best intentions, but sometimes we create problems. Think about places like, every time we try to do dissemination, to try to bring visitors to your place. And then we are thinking about tourism as a mean of increasing the economy of a place. But then we have some problems like we have in some places like Mexico, where you have in only one day, when you have the equinox, you may have 100,000 or 150,000 visitors in only one day. How do you control that amount of people? People jumping all over, trying to get a piece of a stone because that's already being charged with the powers of the sun and the spirit of the gods are going to be in there. So they are taking the pieces of the pyramid. And how do you control that? So there are certain things that we need to think about sometimes. It's not only dissemination by the sake of giving the information to the public, but also move at the same time on certain regulations that we need to keep on mind by the time we are pushing. It seems to me that these two things have to be moving at the same time on the same direction.
I think that's a really good point. Actually, it's came up a couple of times now about the, metal detectorists, and there is people that we have to be careful how we communicate what we're doing, because it's seen as an opportunity for them to, get in there illegally rather than something, that we just assume is interesting to people. Marie, you had your hand up?
This is in a slightly different vein, but I think related to this whole conversation, and something that I had been thinking about earlier. But I think it's also important that we think about cultural sensitivity when making our posts. And, an example that comes to mind is how we treat human remains. Are they something that we should post on social media? Because I know in Scandinavia, there's not really any problems with that. Like, no one minds, at least, I haven't heard anything or seen anything where there's been any real backlash when posting human remains online. But we also have to consider that, everything that goes on social media is, first of all, it's there forever. You can delete it, but we all know it's somewhere. And our, audience has gone from local to global. And so we do have to be, I think, considerate of what other people, may or may not want to encounter when they're scrolling through their feed.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point. Actually, it came up a few times in this summer as well with certain organizations. I know tweeting stuff that is considered incredibly offensive to some of the people who are finding it, and particularly if you're putting it on social media, you're not giving viewers the decision whether they want to see it or not. Often it's just an image out there and you can't take it off. Sorry, there was a thing too. Yeah.
I think that it's also time to start talking about not only about information about heritage, but also about its value. What does it mean? Why what we are doing as archaeologists is important for not just for us, but why it is important for for example, local societies. And also the next issue, the first information about heritage, then about its value, and then about that it's necessary to protect it and how it should be protected. And these small projects I showed you before, they were great because they were building this balance between the knowledge and the protection and value of the heritage in the local communities.
Yeah. No, that's, an excellent point, that if you, tell people what's there and then they appreciate why it's valuable, other than for, monetary reasons, but because it's, it's their local area, it can create a great sense of community and pride that then protects places as well. So, yeah, and we've done work like that where I come from in Northern Ireland. There's been quite a lot of work in community building around archaeology, to try and show also how messy the past is, that it isn't just single identities living, completely separate, that actually everybody can connect to it, so and protect it as well. I was just going to ask the last question, as we're pretty much out of time, so everybody wants to prepare themselves. I will ask Maiya to start with the answers. It's just really, what do you think the future holds for working with social media and archaeology? And, do you see any potential changes? Can you look into your crystal ball, or what do you think is going to happen in the near to distant future?
Blimey, that's a massive question. I don't quite feel like I can gaze into my crystal ball, but I think basically the future for social media and archaeology, basically, well, the limit is our own creativity and how willing we are to be open, I think, to other people's input, and how willing we are to invite people into what we're doing as well. So I think we've got so much we can do and develop. Yeah, I think that's where I'll leave it.
Yeah, maybe give over our expertise a little bit. I think sometimes archaeologists likes to keep the expert to themselves and not always open, these potential opportunities to other people. So it's a big challenge. Does anybody else in the panel have anything to say?
I agree with Maiya. It's like creativity is the limit, and I have already seen like a few really interesting changes with, for example, like museums trying to create virtual tours and stuff. And I think it's a positive thing, not only because, lockdowns and the world being crazy, but I think that even if the world would go back to a more open and, accessible place in the physical realm, it's a great way to reach out to people that might not have that accessibility. We have people who are stuck at home, even if there isn't a lockdown.
Yeah.
And those resources needs to be taken care of and developed, so we can actually provide like heritage and archaeology and the museums and whatever they want, like whatever we want to produce to audiences that might not be able to reach us otherwise. And I think I'm super happy to see like this field opening up, because people have been dabbling in 3D modeling and stuff before, but now it feels like it's gotten serious. It's not just a pet project for someone anymore. It's an actual conversation on a bigger level, which I find really encouraging. And hopefully we can have more collaborations between different like actors in the field, and just continue to roll the ball to grow and to develop and make better content and more content.
Yeah, I think that's a great point around connecting to people who, want to communicate with other people. For them, it's not just about objects, it's about the interaction. I thought that came out really well in what Maiya said about her projects. So, it's people wanting to show what they're finding. They don't just want to go and find stuff, they want to have a conversation about it. So yeah, Maiya.
Yeah, and it goes even further than that, I think. So on all of our excavations and everything that we do, we always ask people what their highlights are. And I'd say about a third of the time, it's people saying being part of a process, being part of a team, and the social interaction that you get from doing archaeology. It's like a joint endeavor. And that's one of the things people enjoy most about it. And I guess that's another area where there can be growth in what we do online. It's that people want to work together and do things together and enjoy that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, totally. I think that's really a good point. So, like, how do we reproduce the commonality of doing a dig online is probably the challenge. Anybody else? Last thoughts?
I have great hopes for virtual reality, but I'm just waiting when the headsets will be much cheaper and much more affordable for the average consumer. Because right now, the stuff they are making is great, but too much money right now.
It'll probably, well, I could imagine that will, you know, it will start to get cheaper and cheaper, and then everybody will be able to use it, hopefully. Okay, everyone, thank you very much for that great conversation. Carolina, do you want to say anything?
No, I just want to comment. I think that everywhere is just, we need just a proper balance between the all informations, what kind of informations we prepare in social media as archaeologists, how we work. And I also think that very important part, also our project, is that we have this interaction during the excavations with people. So I think the most important thing is just a proper balance. So thank you.
Yep. That's a good way to end, Carolina. Thank you. So thank you, everybody. That was great. I really enjoyed speaking to you all and hearing all your contributions. I hope you enjoyed the day as well. So will I hand back to Jens to finish up?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for this interesting talk. I mean, for me, I think being having the sort of the university hat on, then I'm totally convinced that we should increase our teaching and our focus on communication, and especially these different types of communication channels to be better at, of course, using them ourselves, but also to really encourage our students to engage in them. So so that is, from my point of view, what I primarily take away from this day. So yeah, I don't know. Are there any else? I will close the live streaming. So if you have any golden words to